I was just talking to my friend the other night. I think I was one of the first women around LA, during that time, early 50s and late 40s, that had a band, had
Uh-huh.
nerve enough to get a band.
Yeah.
So Martha Young played piano. That was Lee and Lester Young's niece. And my brother played drums. And Walter Benton, a very fine tenor player, which you might have heard of. He's been in ill health some years recently. He played tenor, and I played alto and sang and got the gigs.
All right. During World War II, when a lot of the fellows were in the service, did that make a difference for the opportunities
Well, see,
for
I
the
was
women
still in
music?
school then.
Uh-huh.
I didn't really start until the 48. That's when I got out of high school.
Yeah.
But see, I wasn't playing then. My
Right.
father wouldn't let me come in the clubs.
Yeah.
That was taboo.
Mm.
You know, at that age, I got started really like in the early 50s
Yeah.
and the late uh, 48, 49 is when I got my little band together.
Right.
And I started playing all these sorority events and things like that.
Yeah.
Sororities, fraternity dances. We used to play over at the place called the Alpha Bowling Club. It's a church now. And I'd play one night, and Hampton Halls would have a band there the other night. And the war thing, when the war was going on, I was in school, see.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't out there trying to compete,
Yeah.
for jobs. My father was very active at that time,
Right.
you know, and he did well. So
You got,
hmm
when was your first opportunity to record with?
my first opportunity to record was in 1962, I believe. Um, Leonard Feather came to hear me play one time. He was very impressed with my playing. And then Art Blakey, my former husband, Richie Goldberg, is a drummer. And he knew all the musicians from back east. And when he
Mhm.
came out here, we married out here. And everybody would end up at our house one time or the other for me to fix spaghetti and chili and stuff. But anyway, that's when I met Art Blakey.
Mhm.
And Art Blakey asked me to come and sit in with him one night. And it was at a place called the Renaissance, which is now the House of Blues. And so I took my horn, and ironically, Dexter was there that night too.
Ooh.
And we had a great time. And Alan Douglas from United Artists was there, and he heard me. And we decided to record me for United Artists, and Leonard was in the middle of it,
Mhm.
and that's my first major recording. The album was called Bird Calls. It's a collector's item now.
Mm-hmm.
So, whatever that means.
Were there opportunities that weren't available to you traveling with like perhaps big bands and so forth?
Well, the only time that I really traveled with a band was much later in the late 60s when I went to Europe with Basie.
Mm-hmm.
And let me see, it was after Joe Williams had left, and they needed somebody that could sing the blues.
Uh-huh.
And I mostly sang rather than playing. These guys had some problems with me playing. But that's the only time. Oh, well, let's see. I mean, I go back a little bit. The first time I went out on the road was in the 50s with a gentleman that's still very dear to me. His name is Dick Hart. And he was very nice about really hiring women musicians, too. He'd always have a woman in the band. So I went to places like South Dakota and Montana. That was my first experience, like traveling someplace, But later on, as I said, I went with Basie on a tour of Europe in '68.
Mm-hmm.
We were gone, let's see, I think I was gone for about 18 days, something like that. It's been
Yeah.
quite a while ago. It was great fun. Then when I went before that, when I first went to Europe, I went as a single, and then I played with European musicians. I was at Ronnie Scott's, and I worked 2 weeks opposite Ben Webster, then 2 weeks opposite Max Roach, then 2 weeks opposite Archie Shepp, 4 weeks opposite Coleman Hawkins. So I really had the whole history of jazz right there. You see, I went over as a singer to get around this thing they had. The British had a
Oh, they had a band or something.
band,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So they said I was a singer. Leonard Feather told me I was a singer, that played the saxophone every now and then.
Uh-huh.
But when I started playing, they said, the union over there said, no, you're a saxophone player, and you got to join the union. So I did.
It was a pretty significant event when the two unions merged.
Right, right.
Some people, it seems like I've read that that wasn't a positive thing for everyone concerned.
At the time,
At that,
there was quite a bit of confusion about it. Many of the black musicians kind of got lost in that union over there on Central Avenue, and I worked in it briefly when I was in college with Florence Cadres. Oh gosh, now you don't have enough time for me to go there.
Sure I do.
No, you don't.
Okay.
That was like headquarters. Florence Cadres, that's where Norman Granz got his first 7 musicians. Florence Cadres was the secretary, treasury to that union. She was a wonderful woman, piano player. She played a lot for choirs too. And she was, her mother and my grandmother were very close friends. And everybody just loved Florence Cadres. And of course, Paul Howard worked there, who later, who earlier had the Quality Serenaders. Did you ever hear of them, the Quality Serenaders?
No, I'm afraid I haven't.
Paul Howard. And, it was just like headquarters to all of the black musicians, they went there. And it appears as though when there was a merger, at first they kind of got lost in the shuffle, but then as time progressed and as the civil rights movement was becoming more and more prominent, they started to hire. Well, Florence worked there for a while, and Elmer Fain worked there, and Paul Howard even worked there. They took a few of the people that had been there a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, Buddy Collette was on the board. He might still be. But it had its problems, and I guess they just kind of worked themselves out,
Did the Musicians Union have the place where bands could come and rehearse?
Right,
and
they still
just
have it now.
kind of have a social
Right,
get
right.
together.
Now, that's another thing, I think, the geographics of when they merged, everything was flowing along Central Avenue, sort of, It was the decline, but
Yeah.
there were a lot of musicians that still lived on the east side, a lot of black musicians, and that was right at Washington and Central, whereas if you want to fraternize, you'd have to go all the way to Hollywood. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And that was kind of a problem too. And some of the white musicians were very hesitant about socializing, and that probably made it more difficult for some of them to feel at home, because at 767, as it was called, that was everybody hung out and they played cards and,
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But I'm sure it has improved.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So even though it was a positive, let's say, social step, it's almost like they closed your building.
Yes, it
So
did. They closed the
they lost
building,
it.
then it was sold. I
Yeah.
think the building was sold, and I don't know how they figured out the finances. I really don't remember
Yeah.
that.
Uh-huh.
But it was quite a Marl Young and Buddy Collette. They were really involved in it. Yeah, it's real hard.
Who do you name as your basic influences or people that you looked up to on the saxophone?
Well, you can't speak about the alto saxophone unless you say Charlie Parker, Yardbird Parker. At the time when I saw Bird one time in that 767 when he came in there. He had some union problems. He wasn't concerned about a union card or whatever, but he came to Los Angeles and he didn't have his union card. And Mr. Elmer Fain said, "Oh, you can't play, blah, 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 blah." And he came and I was working there that day. and he asked Florence, Florence, please ask Fane if to give me my card. He was so humble. That's the only time I ever saw him, and he had such a humble spirit. And I said, Florence, is that Bird? Is that Yardbird?
Wow.
She said, yeah, that's Bird. But I never got a chance to hear him play. You know, I never got a chance. But some strange way, his music was in the air, and it influenced me and
Yeah.
so many others.
Right.
And of course, I liked who was this guy? My aunt used to be Tab Smith.
Tab Smith. Yeah.
And Sonny Stitt was a good player. I got to know him later on. We played together one night in Chicago in the 70s. But I don't know, music, who influenced me, the whole 9 yards. It just seems like osmosis. It's just, I can't say that I tried to play like somebody or tried to sing like somebody. It just, whatever I did, it just happened, sort of, you know. I like vocalists very much because my aunt used to make us, when we had to play a solo, she used to make us learn the lyrics to the song. And she'd say, you're supposed to play like you're singing, you know. So I always did. I liked Billy Eckstine very much. And I hope that explains that.
Yes, it does.
Does it?
And that's good advice about knowing the lyrics
Yeah.
to a song.
Right.
How do you feel about the history of how women have been treated in the world of jazz?
Just like they've been treated in other professions. Not too good.
Yeah.
But it's improving as I see some of the younger women musicians playing. Not a whole lot, but I saw recently there were some television shows that were using all women's band, but it was like a gimmick thing again, like going back to that gimmick thing, and I don't like that.
Yeah, like
Except Terry Lynn Carrington, she's a marvelous drummer.
oh yeah.
And there's the Bloom lady,
Jane Ira Bloom.
she's serious. And there's a violinist here. I speak to her every now and then. Can't think of her name right now. I think she's out on the road with, what's this guy's name? He's real big in the new age sound.
Oh, Yanni or one
Yes,
of those fellas?
she's playing with him now.
Yeah.
Yanni. And of course there's Nedra Wheeler. Have you heard of Nedra?
No.
Oh, she's a very fine bassist.
Uh-huh.
Very fine bassist. She played with Elvin a couple of times when he'd come to town.
Uh-huh.
And she's traveled to Japan and about. But it's helped, it's improved some, but just like, I mean, for women, you know, and then the gender thing and the race aspect where black women are concerned, you know, we have 2 strikes.
Uh-huh.
And but it has improved. I'll say that.
The gimmick thing.
You run across the
mentioned-
guys sometimes that don't want you to play with them, you know. But she's just, a lady was asking me that her daughter was concerned because the guys wouldn't let her play. You know, I said, well, just keep practicing. Just get on up there and just play. Push them out of the way. They don't want you to play. Just play anyhow, you know. And you'll always have the audience on your side. So just play, practice, and get good. And the more you play, the better you'll be.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Yeah.
You have to get kind of. You don't have to particularly be masculine, but you have
be
to be
aggressive.
forceful, aggressive. That's
Yeah.
the word.
Yeah.
You have to be aggressive and say, "Hey, I want to be heard too." You know, I still get stubs after all these years. Sometimes I just get on up there and play, and then after that, then they say, "Oh, okay," you know.
You have to prove yourself.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely.